We're going to bring you on to our huddle.
Today is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2013, and you are in the NBA Huddle with me, Bram, and with me as always, my boy and producer, Scott.
Scott here.
Scotty, we're taking a break from our normal NBA Huddle, and we're going to do yet another Flashback episode today. You fired up?
Yes, I am fired up. Always good to return to the old times.
I got to tell you, you didn't seem too fired up there, but I can see it in your eyes. I'm sure you're looking forward to it. Today's Flashback is going to look at a couple of segments I really enjoyed. First one being us figuring out the worst celebrations in the history of the league. The second is us having a discussion of what players could actually play at the age of 50. A couple of things stuck out to me here, man. One, we sound a little canned. We've definitely gotten better as this show's gone on.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, you think we haven't shown any improvement?
Yeah. I don't know about that or the canned part.
Well, shit, I guess it is. And then, two, I thought that our voices sound a little differently. I guess we'll leave that to the listeners to tell us whether or not I'm right. Quick housekeeping before we get there. Only two very quick points. First one, David Stern. We talked last week about all the gangster moments in his career.
We did talk about that.
One of the things we forgot to add is how this man says the word champions. Listen to this.
But there can only be one. One winner of tonight's game, one winner of the NBA Finals, and one 2013 NBA champion, the back-to-back Miami Heat champions.
Phenomenal.
That's great stuff. I don't quite understand why he says it that way, but it's great stuff to listen to.
And he doubles down. I mean, he says it like 3 times in the course of maybe a 30-second segment. I love that he does that. Secondly, this one's a little embarrassing. I held myself out as some kind of expert in gambling. I tried to explain what the hell over-under was, and then the example I gave for the Lakers-Warriors was 110 points. Unless the final score of that game was fucking 55-56, that wouldn't work out. My apologies. I meant 210.
And you can tell I'm not a gambler. That went right over my head.
And I can tell you don't even care about it now.
Yeah.
All right, any housekeeping? You ready to turn this over to the past episodes?
Let's get started on the past Flashback.
Let's do it. Hope you guys enjoy.
But all of this has led us to ask the question, what the hell are the best celebrations in the history of the NBA?
Well, let me just start with what the hell is going on with Steph Curry's celebrations, because those are terrible. We saw the weird gallop in the Clippers game.
The bobblehead gallop?
The bobblehead gallop. And I don't know if he just messed up on the Gangnam-style dance or what was going on there, but that was terrible. And then the next game against the Thunder, he hits a shot, gets fouled by Westbrook, falls down, gets up on his knees, and does this awful, awkward shimmy shake.
Down there. That was the Mark Jackson shimmy. That was an immediate testament to his head coach. Maybe not pulled off as well as I'd like to see, but I understand what he was trying to do.
They asked him about it, and he did not give any credit that it was to Mark Jackson. He said, I was excited.
He's not necessarily the best with describing his celebrations. I think he was unable to describe the bobblehead one as well, but anyone who's seen Mark Jackson do his shimmy can recognize that he was doing one as well. We're focusing on the worst, though. Give me the best. Best NBA celebration. Who's your first?
My first one would be the Larry Johnson L that he formed with his arm.
That.
Mainly because I just got to bring up Larry Johnson and talk about those Grandma Ma commercials were my favorite. Do you think that laid the groundwork for Tyler Perry's recent success?
God, I hope not. I am so sorry. This goes to our listeners that the words Tyler and Perry were uttered right next to each other in this podcast. Please feel free to fast forward if you ever actually listen to this thing again. What I do think is that LJ's supposed LJ was, just as you said, just an L. He'd put those goddamn two arms together, supposedly forming the words L and J. There was no J in that. How the hell was he allowed to do it? I'm going to match you with a much better one, probably my favorite of all time. The king, the best player to have ever touched a basketball, Michael Jordan's fist pump. Nothing that I have ever seen has been a more perfect embodiment of his justified arrogance. Every time he did that shit, it immediately conveyed that he 100% knew the shot he just hit was going in. He also knew that you knew that it was going in, but he was going to celebrate that shit with the fist pump anyways. That thing was sweet.
No, I don't think it was sweet at all. That's such a boring celebration. It has there's no enjoyment there. There's nothing unique about it. It's just very understated.
It's not unique because everyone has copied it since he put it out there. I mean, I guess not everything can be Larry Johnson's L, man.
I think people were pumping their fists before Michael Jordan started doing it. That's like crediting him with the whole baggy shorts thing.
Well, who do you got then? Who else did the fist bump before him?
I mean, I could name like a million players. Every NBA player.
Go ahead, shoot. Who
Magic
did it before
Jordan?
He didn't do that shit. You can't
Larry
think of
Bird.
one location he was doing that.
Larry Bird.
Bullshit. What game? Lies.
What do you mean?
You're lying now. This is just straightforward bullshit lies. When I say fist pump and celebration, you don't think of Magic Johnson. You don't think of Isaiah Thomas. You don't think of fucking Larry Bird. You may think that other people did it before, but it was Jordan who made that shit famous. When Kobe Bryant does it at the end of every shot, do you think he's imitating Larry Bird?
I think that it's pretty natural to pump your fist after a good play.
So he's not. So he's not copying Jordan when he does that.
Well, Kobe always tries to copy Jordan, so that probably is. But I think, let me just move on from this Michael Jordan because I don't really even enjoy talking about that guy.
Yeah.
The Sam Cassell big balls dance.
Amazing.
That was just a real joy.
Yes, I'm 100% on board with this, even though I'm a little bit upset that you said you didn't like talking about Michael Jordan. Nothing conveys I have the balls necessary to hit a last-second shot like mimicking those balls while running down the court. That dude is fucking sweet. I'll give you that one. I'll match that with, it pains me to say this because this is a Warriors podcast, but Sean Kemp's celebration after he shit all over Alton Lister in the 94 playoffs. First, he shits on him just so nastily, then goes for 10 seconds of uninterrupted handguns before running back down the court. That was nasty as hell.
I think that was on every NBA Inside Stuff rewind.
Like the top 10 dunks.
Yeah,
they always start
stayed
off
on
with
there.
It. Yeah. Who else you got?
I got, and I don't really like this one, but you just have to put it on the list. The Mutombo finger wag after he would block a shot.
Why don't you like it?
I just think that it was a little silly and just too manufactured. It was like Dikembe was just coming and trying to be cool and trying to think of something that could brand him, and he came up with this terrible finger wag.
I like how seemingly condescending it was. I also like the idea that when he went into that Georgetown bar and threw out the "Who Wants to Sex Mutombo," at least one of the filthy ugly women before leaving gave him the finger wag. You know, I'll match that with another Mutombo celebration. One I think was a little bit better. When his Denver Nuggets team beat the Supersonics in '94, when they completed, I think it was that 5-game series, right? They have that iconic shot of him laying on the ground with the ball above his head. Now, obviously, Dikembe is an ugly man. He made our all Huddle ugly team. I think that was the only sequence of movements that could have made his face actually look more awkward. I think that's the largest mouth I've ever seen, much larger than Cookie Monster's, for example.
You had to enjoy how happy and elated he was and kind of share in that moment because that's just a classic NBA moment. Everyone's got to love that.
I'm surprised you didn't tell me that he didn't invent opening his mouth, that Larry Johnson or Isaiah Thomas or fucking Larry Bird were the first people to do that. I've only got one more. This being Reggie Miller's choke sign, the one he threw up to Spike Lee after putting up 35 points in the 94 Eastern Conference Finals thing. What I loved about it, great anger, great moment, but best of all, one of the only celebrations that said fuck you to the fans at the same time it said fuck you to the team.
That was that's the kind of killer instinct that I wish Curry could have. I mean, that captures it right there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I only got one more, and that would be Magic Johnson. I believe it's his first game playing in the NBA. The hug, and Kareem hits the game winner, and Magic just goes all out celebration, gets so happy, hugs Kareem.
Like jumps into his arms.
And Kareem is just stunned. He's like, this is the first game of a long regular season.
Well, you know he told him that too. We got 80 more to these, kid. Why don't you settle the fuck down?
Yeah, but it just kind of showed what Magic was about to bring to the game, which is just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, not just skill, not just presence of mind, but the ability to celebrate unlike anyone we've seen to date. Which leads us to our final segment, Who the Hell? Now, this past Sunday, February 17th, 2013, Michael Jordan, the greatest player to have ever touched a basketball, turned 50 years old. And his old trainer, Tim Grover, came out and said that he could still average 20 points today. That led us to return to Who the Hell and finally ask the question, who the hell could play at 50 years of age? Let me start out with an easy one. Could Jordan?
This segment should be called What the Hell is Jordan Doing Thinking He Can Play and Return to the Game at 50? We saw his second comeback. It did not go well, and he was much younger back then. So what the hell does Jordan think he can do? It's depressing to me that he's still hanging on to this idea. And I understand you're one of the greatest of all times, but at some point you just got to move on, man.
Well, it didn't come from him; it came from his trainer. But
No. There's an article by Wright Thompson on ESPN where Jordan discusses the idea that he actually is trying to get back down to his playing weight of 218.
I love that.
And is really still entertaining this idea. So this is not just us creating this out of nowhere.
Let me give you 2 questions then, Graham. 1, could he do it? 2, does it bother you that he thinks that he can?
Yeah, no, it doesn't bother me that he thinks that he can. I think that's what his greatness was his mind. I think he'll always have to deal with fathers. His mindset will always be he's the greatest. He can still do it. No one can touch him. But he's 50 years old. I mean, do I think he could be on an NBA court? He could be on a court, but who's he guarding? Who's he going to stay in front of? What's he going to live off? Like 18-foot jump shots? And I feel like I'd feel bad for him.
Yeah.
And that would be really hard for me to see.
I think he'd be a better perimeter defender than Steph Curry right now. But I think that he could be on a roster. I don't think he's averaging 20. I don't think he's averaging 20 minutes, let alone 20 points. But I do think you could get him out there for, 10 to 12 savvy-ass veteran minutes where he gets off at least 3 to 4 really dirty fouls that nobody notices and 2 or 3 fall-away jumpers that make us think, oh, that's what Jordan used to look like. But basically the big losers in this, just like you say, Graham, would be the fans. Nobody wants to see that. It was depressing seeing him getting crossed over by Iverson. I don't need to see him get crossed over by Kyrie Irving. That sounds awful to me. Now, how about beyond that? Are there any players out there who you think that could actually play at 50? And I'll start us off. In fact, I'll keep us right here in our own backyard. Mr. Carl Landry. Now, Carl Landry doesn't just look like he's 50 years old, and incidentally has my second favorite bald spot in the league behind Manu Ginobili. His game is that of a 50-year-old vet. He's got no athleticism. He couldn't jump over a quarter if he needed to. But he's got this series of savvy veteran moves he pulls off in the post that basically depends on his basketball IQ to beat people. You think you give him another 21 years, he'd probably have the exact same game. What do you guys got?
Well, I think the only way it would be possible would be a big man who was slow already, so speed wasn't their game. I'm thinking like someone like Sabonis. Like, how old was Sabonis when he finished? Like, that guy he was old, didn't move much. But I remember him still being somewhat effective when he played.
How old was he when he started?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, Sabonis' body, I completely agree with you. He was on my list of people because Sabonis, when he started playing the NBA, his body was 50, and he was still making stuff happen. So
his body was 50. He had no ligaments at all in either of his knees. He was like 95.
So how much worse could it have gotten a decade later? Probably not that much worse.
You think about someone like Yao Ming. If he's 50 years old, keeps himself in decent. I don't know. I know his feet are terrible. He's got problems.
Keeps himself in decent shape. Yao Ming is going to be in a wheelchair by the time he turns 36. That dude's got more fucking medical problems than I care to list here.
With modern technology, you never know. You never know what's going to happen. Yoga.
Unless he becomes the billion-dollar man, they have the technology and they can fix him. This dude isn't playing at fucking 50. I'll give you another name I think can. Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan's game, much like Carl Landry, has always been that of an old man. We call him the big fundamental for a reason. He's not jumping over you. He's not overpowering you. He's outthinking you. He's done that for every single year. I mean, best illustration, we've probably waited, the last, what seems like 20 years for Father Time to catch up to him, and it just doesn't happen. This guy keeps putting up all-star numbers. I think if you let him play another 20 years, he's going to have the exact same game. He'd be just as hateable and just as good.
He'll continue to just bore his defender to death in order to get by and score.
Graham, but weigh in here. Big fundamental. Good name or bad name?
I love the nickname myself. I think it hits it right on the head. I mean, that's who he is. He's the most fundamental player. He's boring as hell. Bored his way to 4 championships and a bunch of all-star games. And yeah, his game was never on athleticism. And I mean, how old is he? 36 maybe?
36, 51. I have no idea.
The problem is, how are you going to play at 50? Because how do you keep playing competitively for the next 14 years? Where he could retire and then try to come back. And how are you going to do that?
Yeah, and why do that if he's got all that success? Why keep going? I don't think this is a logical discussion as much as could they actually do it. I'll add one more. I think the 3 old wise men from the Knicks, Jason Kidd, Marcus Camby, Rasheed Wallace, I think they could do it. Not because I have to project it all. I'm fairly certain their ages range from 79 to 81. So as of right now, they're already doing it. So we don't even have to guess. Just watch a Knicks game and you can see this thing play out.
I'll throw out one more. I think Kareem... mainly because he had the skyhook, which is a shot that's just unstoppable. And so that would have continued. He also is really into yoga, martial arts. So the guy is keeping his body nimble and just has a repertoire that is really impressive.
I think realistically, that probably is the only player that probably really had a chance. Because he was lean. He wasn't like a big guy. He was big, but he was lean. And he did Bikram yoga, did Tai Chi. So he did all the little things to kind of keep everything working.
Good knowledge on the type of yoga. Quick point on Kareem that strikes me now, but that's always bothered me. How much of an asshole must this guy be behind the scenes? We're talking about somebody who developed a shot that has nothing to do with athleticism. It's something that you can learn and teach that is absolutely dominant. Nobody can stop it. With the skyhook, he literally has a move you can teach to a post player that completely changes that guy's game, and he has never been hired anywhere. Sean Bradley, 7'6". This dude was a giant loser, couldn't figure out his game. Kareem could have been brought in and at least teach him a shot that no one could have blocked. Never done. There is a litany of stiffs that could have learned that goddamn high hook or that sky hook, and it would have changed their entire careers, but nobody wanted to bring Kareem in to teach him. This guy must have been a gigantic douche.
And I think it's kind of like I had a chance to see Kareem speak one time, and he really did come off pretty arrogant and pretty off-putting. And he was speaking to high school kids. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of maybe how Jordan spoke at the Hall of Fame induction, where it was like, these are just salty, competitive. They think the world's against them. They're very ornery, type individuals. Now, I don't know him. I had to spend a lot of time. But my seeing him talk for 30 minutes, that was kind of the take after it. Like, wow, man, this guy, he feels like he's wronged. He feels like there's been injustice to him.
Well, in a competitive league like the NBA, where people do anything they need to do to win, that they wouldn't bring him in. I feel like he showed up to a bunch of job interviews with no pants on and let them know, look, this is what I'm going to do when I show up to practice. If you need pants, you don't need me. All right. Phenomenal kicking it, you guys. I think the three-man weave worked just perfectly.